Welcome, everybody, to our Sunday Truth Talk. My name is Jona Bryndis. I'm a living True Self Radio, and I want to thank you all for coming here today and spending this time with your true self by watching this video, by logging in, by spending time with truth. Thank you for coming in today. I want to talk about the use and maybe also the necessity for higher learning. What is higher learning? Well, let's look a little bit into our own history here, how we have learned in the past. How have you guys learned in the past? I don't know how this went for you, but I can tell you how this went for me. Pretty much like for most of us, I made a lot of mistakes and I've experienced certain types of pain over and over again. And I learned nothing. How can I say this? Because in my attempt to understand better what is happening, I've focused all my energy on learning how things work. I've gathered a lot of knowledge. I've tried several things. Some of you know this. I started out as a scientist wanting to understand how everything works on the biochemical level, and then I recognized patterns and I wanted to learn how to program and how to be a software engineer. And then I realized the more I knew, the less I understood. And so with all this knowledge gathered, all this really did to me was understanding less why this pain that I've experienced in my relationships or within myself, why this basically got worse. So the older I got and the more repetition in my life occurred, the unhappier I became. And this is why I want to look into the shift that needs to happen here in how we learn. Maybe repetition isn't quite the tool that we need. Why do I say this? Because if you look at the history of mankind, there were different conditions and different situations that required us to approach the world and ourselves in it in different ways. So think back of the Stone Age or caveman type of situation. All you really had to know which animals and which plants were good for you or which would kill you. And that was a paradigm that was mostly determined through your instinctual pre-programmed learning, okay, and some of it through experience, mainly pain, right? So if we did something wrong in this super simplified environment, we either got killed right away or we got really sick. So as humanity then progressed, in like say the Bronze Age, where things were still pretty warlike, dog eats dog, and we had to be the strongest or else we had no chance of survival. There we could apply some of our learning through experience, all right? So the more we trained, like say maybe sword fight or pottery or whatever, the higher our chances of survival. And then as time progressed, even throughout the Middle Ages, say, the paradigm that was introduced to us or that we lived in, that was mainly determined by some kind of authoritarian god, all right, that determined whether something was good or evil, was still pretty simple. All we had to do was play by the rules and make sure that we could coexist with other people here based on this simple good or bad, evil or divine type of environment. And then even in the industrializing phases of our society, things made us become more and more fixated on the materialistic aspect of our being. I think, therefore I am. And what it did to us was that we started to fixate right around 500 years ago on knowledge or, being better than other people. And the world that we have today, guys, even just within these last 10 years, really, has drastically changed. The complexity has exponentially increased. And this is the reason why just trying to be better and seeing ourselves in this sort of materialistic consumer oriented way, a body with a soul, right? We all accept that we have something like a non-living, non-materialistic part to us, but we primarily see ourselves here as a 3D being. And this is the part that is now being challenged through this increased complexity in our world, because our problems become more and more global. They become more and more non-material. Even things such as the coronavirus or the planetary problems, problems with our children, problems with depression, anxiety, and so forth. Those are all problems that cannot really just treated or approached by the way we have been learning in the past. We have to find different ways to adapt to this increased complexity. And people like myself and other wonderful teachers, they celebrate this time as a wonderful transition, as a global awakening, as something that is really, really cool for our human development, for our evolution of consciousness. And why is this? Because for the first time in the existence of humanity, we actually have to begin to rely on other senses that we have, technologies that we already have. It's not that we have to, go out and send our kids to a boot camp for 10 years like they used to do this in the Middle Ages. We all have this within us, but the way the paradigm is changing on the outside right now forces us to change the paradigm within ourselves. And what is this paradigm shift that is happening within us? It is recognizing that we are more than just sort of a bag of meat, all right, with a nervous system and with animalistic instincts and even with just a brain. We are more than that. We have a connection with other people. We have a connection to our inner self, all right, that helps us to navigate through this world, but we've never really been taught how to utilize this. And this is the subject here for today's truth talk with you. Higher learning. What is the higher learning? How can we understand ourselves in a different way that shifts the way we navigate through the world, that shifts the way we interact with other people and how we understand ourselves? The ultimate goal here is to understand that we are not a body with a soul, that we are a soul with a body. There is an unchanging, eternal part in us. And how can I say this with so much certainty? That is when you understand all the aspects of our cognitive learning, all the aspects of what your body brings in here as tools, okay? Your central nervous system, your limbic system, the animalistic part of you, and your frontal lobe, the part in you that allows you to conceptualize and that allows you to intellectualize, rationalize, and that even allows you to a certain degree to think in an abstract way. If you've explored all the levels of lower learning, don't misunderstand me, this is not a judgment here, just the common learning that is based on understanding ourselves as a material, as a solid particle, all right, then you begin to understand that these beliefs, such as I think, therefore I am, can't be true. You are discovering new truths because you and every person in your life, all plants, all living beings, they exist regardless of their thinkingness. They exist because something, some greater intelligence, some higher power has brought it forward. We call this divine creation. So whether you are very spiritual or not doesn't matter. There is an undebatable truth in the existence of life, and that is something that we all perceive here going through us as life force on a day-to-day basis. So when it comes to higher learning and understanding the mechanisms of this particular way of seeing ourselves and life itself, we need to, and this is now the part that I want you here on Facebook, you'll be able to see this on your screen. We need to shift the way we learn. All right, so if you, even if you can't read this right now, don't worry about this, okay? What you're seeing on the screen is the two pyramids of learning. There's the lower pyramid, which is the conscious learning that comes through our nervous system, through our brain, really, all right? And it goes through several stages, the programming that we all have in our DNA, like a protozoic one-cell organism, okay? There is a part in us that can identify whether something would kill us or not. Then we have our instincts, we have our, the things that are unique to our species. We can learn things through repetition. This is what I've described about my own learning curve here in my life, the first half of my life. It's just repeat, and it conditioned me to act in a certain way, but it didn't lead to fulfillment or to higher levels of happiness or higher levels of abundance. It just created a stronger pull into trying to control everything and fixating me on seeing this even more material, the world and myself. And then, of course, we have the ability to learn, to memorize, to conceptualize, and to abstract. And that then allows us to form belief systems around. And this is the lower pyramid, and what I earlier called the lower learning, all right? This is the part in you where you simply function on a binary level, all right? Where pain and pleasure become your, good and evil, all right? And it works through repetition. So the more you learn to cope with things, and the more you cope, the more you form a belief system, an ego belief system around this, and this then becomes your reality. And this is where you see this main bar here in the middle. It's the difference between ego perception and higher perception. And higher perception is something that comes in through moving your attention towards the internal, towards your subjective, unique understanding of yourself and of the world that you live in, and even the people that you live with. All right, and it shifts the way you learn from this binary place where you do nothing but really sort of sorting people and circumstances and jobs and relationships and consumer items as good or bad. All right, it's a very, very polarized, dualistic way of seeing things, all right, whether it brings me pain or pleasure, all right. And this is also where a lot of the fixation and addiction that most of us consciously or unconsciously experience in our life, this shifts into understanding that if I actually go within myself and realize that there's something very, very unique and subjective about the way I feel, about the way I process the world, about the way I understand the world and myself in it. And this paradigm shift of learning is really when we begin to understand the importance of connecting. So it's a connecting process that happens with first ourselves and then with others, that begins to see the broader picture here, that all life is connected. And this is where all this sort of these new age truths come from. We're all connected. We all sort of operating within a paradigm that allows us on the one hand to individualize as soul selves, but on the other hand, and this goes actually hand in hand, recognize how we are all connected. And this is then when people discover things such as heart intelligence. Okay, so this is where research or science is very big right now on proving that there is a tissue in our skin, tissue in our heart that has actually the property, or that has the ability to think, that has an intelligence and that stores memory. All right, and what this really means is that we are beginning to realize here as a human race, okay, that we are not just our brain. Okay, there's more to us. And obviously the science is out there to prove that we exist on this multidimensional level, that there is something in us that survives us. All right, so this is basically or started 500 years ago with trying to find the secret of immortality. Okay, but if you really understand yourself as a soul with a body and no longer as a body with a soul, you understand that this is actually irrelevant. All you really need to do is feel into these parts in you that provide you with a broader bandwidth, so to speak, that provide you with a more sophisticated way of learning, and form your own roadmap to this. And this is then where these trends, today's trends in psychology, in marketing, and so forth, come from, that are called mindfulness right now. Mindfulness as a new way of learning about yourself, a new way of self awareness, present moment awareness, that allows you to self master yourself. And mindfulness is, you guys probably know this if you've listened to me for a while, I think a very, very unlucky word, okay? Because most of us, in order to get into this place, really have to learn how to detach from our mind, how to let go of the mind, all right, to get out of our mind. And the word mindfulness, quite frankly, makes me cringe, because it's really the opposite of what this is actually supposed to do. So mindfulness, all right, so don't take this literally, is nothing but the awareness that when we actually go within, we can become a better self-master about what we're thinking, what we're feeling, what we're emoting, and even what we're sensing. And this then requires us to learn a new technology, namely the tools of all of this. What does this even mean? All right, there's this feeling at first that we are completely powerless over our mind. Any one of you who has ever tried to meditate knows this, okay? And please feel free to share here. Okay, what is the first thing that happens to you when you or happened to you when you tried to meditate? Right, the first thing you experience is how strong your mind really is. All right, and how hard it is to get out of your mind. And it took me almost 20 years from the time that I was first introduced to meditation, which was at the age of 8, till like almost 30 year, okay, to understand what meditation truly is. It is not the better control of my mind, because if I try to control my mind, then my mind becomes even more active, It is the letting go of the mind. It is the letting go of all the things that are actually in the way of connecting with what is underneath the mind. And here is really where you might begin to understand a little better where I'm coming from when I talk about higher learning. We have to learn how to bypass some of these things that we used to be fixated on, that we used to identify with, our beliefs, our mindsets, and also our emotions, and sometimes also our physical pains, or the pains that we have experienced, the pain and the pleasure throughout our life. Yes, exactly, Sebastian. It's a never ending flow, it's a never ending shadow box our mind. And this is why I really don't like the word mindfulness, but let's just stick with it just so that for common lingo here. Okay, so you go into mindfulness at first to realize how strong your mind really is. And here is where a lot of people in this transformation process get stuck. Why is this? Because we still have this belief that it is our mind that actually does things. So when I see these teachings that say the power of your mind, or the law of attraction, or the secret, those are very successful marketing concepts here that have actually hijacked the original meaning of mindfulness into, you just have to get better at controlling your mind, and you can use your mind to create your reality. And if your reality is for shit, well, that means you're not controlling your mind well enough. And it has created sort of another sort of wrong exit for people, which is why you get stuck there. All right, the technology that you already have in you that allows you actually to let go of your fixation on the mind and your emotion comes through really clearing those things out of the way, comes through letting go. And this is the hardest part for us in this whole process of higher learning, because we have to be willing to let go of something that we have been fixated on for so long. We have to now recognize that our ego mind has gotten us so far, but where we now want to go, that it's actually creating a barrier. This is this collective barrier that you see there, the second bar, all right, where most people get stuck, because we on a collective level, all right, as a whole collective, we need to now begin to feel a different way of seeing ourselves. And yes, Patricia, soul pulse, that's exactly what this feels like, all right, to get past this collective barrier and to be truly willing to let go of the mind. All right, we have to learn to trust in something, and this trust comes in through our subtle feelings. This comes in through our energy. This comes in through a pulse. It's something like a calling that is so deep within. Many people experience this as a longing or some kind of nostalgia of the soul. And you can all feel this, guys. But to overcome the barrier that is in you still through this collective programming and conditioning, all right, you've got to be willing to trust in this. You've got to be willing to trust in your heart, in what comes through, allowing all this to be your guide. All right, so this is the hard part for so many of us, all right, to let go of what we've previously relied upon. Yes. And so this frequency, I like how you say this, Patricia, is often also confused here. And this is why so many of us here that are already awakened and that are already making an effort to live as a true self, and to meet other people, to connect with other people on this deeper level. I don't even want to call this spiritual level. It's really just a deeper connection, a deeper form of exchange of energies, all right? This is where many of us get confused, because we think that these relationships and these interactions with other people, that this has to be now sort of blissful, that this has to be the highest level of sort of pleasure. Okay, and here's where the next level or the next barrier of us needs to be learned, or we need to learn how to get past this next barrier, which is our personal karma, our personal ego stuff that we've been carrying around, yes, and how we see pleasure and learn to discern between joy and pleasure. So joy is a whole different level of understanding myself and the life force going through me. It requires us to go into places that allow mutual exchange, that allow appreciation and gratitude and abundance on all levels. So here again, a lot of us can get stuck in thinking that life always needs to be happy and hunky-dory, and that we always need to be in a state of bliss. And this is where this misconception that spirituality would bring in plethora of just positivity to you, steers people back into their own personal barriers and passivity, so to speak, where we can get fooled by our own desire for spiritual enlightenment, and what we experience in the process of actually going into this deeper connection with ourselves and others as something that will completely just work out for us if we just have sort of this idea that we are always in a positive mindset. And this is where another level of learning comes in. It has to do with really feeling our soul. This is what I call soulfulness. This is where we begin to understand that these paradigms of pain and pleasure, these old ways of learning, that they no longer apply. When I am in this soulful place and I followed the pulse of my soul, and I'm beginning to familiarize myself with it, and I'm beginning to feel it, and I'm beginning to understand my medicine and my abundance in this presence of my own life force, I also understand that there is nothing really that I need to control. I don't need to be focusing on positivity either. Nothing is either positive or negative. I can witness things on a level that allows me to see the greater purpose and the greater meaning in all of this, even my pain. And I begin to understand that every experience is a learning experience. That is one of the hallmarks of higher learning, guys. And then comes another level, and this is the part where we move into embodiment through cultivating this, through executing this kind of understanding of myself and others, and in sharing this with others at all times, because I don't really need to hold on to anything. I understand my soul as this pulse of life in me, this divine creation going through me, no matter what, whether I'm in a low place or in a high place. All right, I don't need to be in a high place if I know that I am awake. So we talked about this a few weeks ago, the difference between being awake and asleep. So your I am awareness, your present moment awareness, allows you to be empathetic with yourself, the world, and others at all times, and allows you to understand that everything, and this is very hard to understand when you are still in sort of an ego understanding of yourself, that everything is perfect the way it is. And out of this then comes a whole new bandwidth, a whole new connection, not just with myself, with others, but also with the divine Wi-Fi, as I call this, the connected, unified existence of all living beings here. And I call this gracefulness, when we learn to exist in this place as an embodied soul self, because in there is no seeking anymore, and there is no owning, no getting, no needing anymore. There is an understanding that life happens through me. It is through my existence that I bring this divine creation into expression. And this happens on a level of grace, meaning that it is no longer determined by good or bad or any kind of restrictions. It is something that I bring out into the world, and the world reflects this back to me through an abundance, through a natural way of happiness and fulfillment. All right, so it's a knowingness that I develop at this place where I really don't need anything anymore, and where I understand that this journey of enlightenment is really a journey of letting go of all the things that are in the way of connecting with myself, with others, and divine creation. And this requires us to go through a maturing process here. Exactly. Yes, we need to follow these soul pulses without the mind. It's so difficult, and I have so much understanding for everyone who listens to me and thinks those are all just a bunch of cool words, because it really is, and this is the part here that I want to show today. It really is a journey of internalizing. We actually have to experience this to fully understand this. This is the individualized soul self, all right, is the one that understands that, all these things that we want to learn from here on, like the higher learning aspect, that they are very, very unique to myself. They are subjective. And this is sometimes why it's so difficult for us, because we have been conditioned with, I guess, what the scientific paradigm calls objectivity. So we have been, trained to not trust in our inner pulsing, in this inner sort of calling that comes. And so many of you are in this place right now where you have to recontextualize all of this. So I wanted to show you, I'll give you a little bit of a roadmap here, how you can master some of these shifts that are happening within all of us right now. Okay, so yes, there is of course still a smaller percentage of us that are actually resonating with this kind of material, but there is overall the tendency for people to recognize that we have to, sort of amp up. We have to rock up here in this world, or else we can't really resolve the things that are coming in here right now. I mean, think of the issues with the transhumanism and augmented and virtual reality. The technology trying to simulate our consciousness. Right, this is happening simultaneously to us developing more consciousness. So we really need to rock up into this place of knowing how to do this, how to use this higher learning technology that we all have in us in a way that allows us to recognize the individuality and the uniqueness of our own contextualization, of our own ideas, of our own thinking. It is something that I sometimes also talk about in context with spiritual freedom. All right, to recognize that the power of choice is not about making the right choices. The power of choice is making the choices that are right to us, from within us. All right, and to learn how to form our own roadmap here, how to form our own value system, our own system of understanding ourselves and the world. And there are 5 principles that I wanted to introduce to you here today. And please, guys, keep commenting and also ask questions. And these principles, I will bring them into 3 different contexts with you, okay? It's the principle number 1 is feeling, is learning how to connect. And this requires us to form new levels of tolerance, all right? There's so many of us who are out there, feeling this soul pulse and not knowing what this is. And we think this is depression, or we think this is pain or sadness, and we have no way to contextualize this. So the concept of feeling, or the technology of feeling, is something that we all have. This has nothing to do with emoting. This has something to do with actually choosing to sit in something and to feel into it, to deeper connect with something, to sit through it and to reflect on it. The second principle that is needed here as technology is the power of internalization, is the power of, okay, so now that you are connecting with your feelings, and now that you are forming higher levels of tolerance for things, you're no longer just following this binary good or bad, pain or pleasure paradigm. You are now allowing yourself to actually feel deeper into things. You now need to learn how to make this your own, how to internalize this, how to no longer see this just as a sort of random occurrence of outer things, and to become more clear about your own aspects of this. Internalizations happens through forming literacy, so that we can become more clear about what it actually is that we are thinking, that we are emoting, that we are sensing, that we are feeling. All right, and understanding what this actually means to me. Like, does this mean that I have a need here that is currently not met somehow, and that I need to do something. All right, it helps us in the beginning stages of forming a roadmap. We can learn to feel what is good for us, what is conducive for us, what helps us to grow, what helps us to understand that this continual internalization allows us to see the truth of ourselves and others. All right, so really internalizing the truth of it all, and seeing our own parts, but also in the process gaining the clarity of what this actually means and what kind of actions and choices have to follow. And this leads then to the third principle, which is the actual competence. All right, because with this increased awareness now of my needs, of my integrity, of my understanding of truth, and being willing to see my own parts and things, I'm now beginning to understand that if I want to grow, I have to change things. I need to be open for a change. I need to learn, like I've mentioned in the beginning here, for my own learning curve, all right, that certain relationships are simply not good for me. And the one part that I have not changed was myself, the way I relate to other people. So with self-awareness, then we begin to form a new competence with ourselves and say, oh, no, I'm not doing that. I've tried that 100 times. And no matter how I approach it, that's not good for me. No matter how I twist or turn it, or no matter how many justifications or rationalizations my mind can come up with, it's not good for me. So I allowed this to become my competence and my roadmap for my own integrity and values. And then comes the actual navigation that is now fortified through our present moment awareness. I am aware at all times. I am witnessing as I am experiencing and observing. I'm looking what this does to me, and I'm listening to my inner impulses, not the emotional or mental or physical impulses that come through my ego. Okay, my ego as sort of the paradigm for survival, for perseverance. Okay, seeking pleasure and avoiding pain, not based on my ego, but based on my soul self. This is where a lot of you guys feel this calling, to wanting to do something, and you witness this, and this then turns into your inner guidance, and you begin to actually listen to your inner guidance and to follow it. And the fifth principle is the actual recontextualization of everything that is happening to you. And this leads to self-mastery. Then you begin to understand that some things are really necessary for you to learn. You understand that change is a part of the deal. You accept change at all times, and you take self-responsibility in this, all right? And but you also use this as motivator, because you now know that this is the way you learn, right? So you keep trying. You've formed the willingness, all right, to feel all this and to go into deeper connection, and now you form this competency within yourself and the self-awareness that allows you to be to rely on this at all times, that allows you to have this functioning heart navigator in place, and you have no fear anymore, all right? You keep trying, and you actually keep sort of embracing all the challenges that come, and you take them as part of your own self-responsibility. You say, okay, this is at my doorstep right now. I guess this means I have to deal with this, all right? And you no longer see the world as, sort of just bombarding you and victimizing you and blaming things on others. You can totally see how, this, whatever it is that is happening to you, is a consequence of your own energy. This is self-mastery, guys. So these 5 principles, feeling and connecting, internalizing and forming clarity, really standing in your awareness and competence, and then forming a navigation, a roadmap for this, and then beginning to trust in this, and really seeing your own responsibility in all of the things that are occurring in your life, as not as a blame or a punishment, but as a consequence of your alignment of, what part in you have listened to, or which part in you have learned from. Okay, so higher learning in the emotional sense, then, and that leads to us forming emotional maturity, has a lot to do with the same principles. All right, so it's the number one part here is the accepting, the connecting with your emotions, the facing the challenges, and deciding that you no longer want to hide or check out or avoid your emotions. All right, and that you need to feel your needs and your wants and your desires, and also bring them into expression. So it's the first step of making conscious choices. Without the step, guys, you cannot even think about anything like spiritual maturity or energetic maturity. You have to form this emotional maturity in its most fundamental, profound stage, namely accepting and facing challenges and forming emotional tolerance through feeling into your emotions and not avoiding them. The second principle applies then in form of dedicating yourself to truth, and forming emotional literacy. We have something, I forgot the exact number, so forgive me if this is not the right number, but something like 32,000 recorded and qualified emotions, and most people obviously don't have the literacy to use these 32,000 descriptors. But what we do is instead we describe our emotions with good or bad, with a very binary or non-sophisticated way, perhaps even 3, 4, 5. Most people actually use up to 8 emotional descriptors. That is not enough for self-awareness and emotional maturity, guys. In the process of learning to face your emotions, you also need to learn how to differentiate them, and how to reflect them within, and bring them into the expression to others. All right, this is really important here, because otherwise you will never find out the difference between you actually dealing with something and facing something, or just coping with something. So a lot of us lack this literacy, and it doesn't really allow us to see the truth, to see that, it really is an honesty with ourselves that is needed to, navigate through our own emotions. Then the third principle is, the competence here that can only form through embracing or dedicating ourselves to growth, to understanding that this is a continual process that needs to be cultivated. It doesn't develop naturally. Nobody wants to work through pain or wants to work through challenges. All right, this is ego. All right, so we have to get past this through choosing. All right, our willingness, okay, to consciously trying to really wanting to understand the other person, or wanting to understand the world, the willingness to talk. People who are emotionally mature, they're always willing to talk. They're always aligned to resolving things, all right, and they're always willing to be honest with themselves, as far as they can be honest. That again, it depends on the emotional literacy, but they're also willing to see things from a different point of view. And you can see here how your mind can really be in the way of this, because the mind get stuck in beliefs and mindsets that actually don't allow you to do this. And then the principle number 4, the navigation part, that comes through knowing yourself, really know your emotions, know your patterns, know your trauma, the stuff that can pull you into your ego. Be responsible for it. Know your boundaries, know your values, know your needs and your wants, and your integrities. Make a stance for this. This is then what allows you to learn how to really feel competent in this world. All right, not by trying to conform or by idealizing other people who do this, or teachings or whatever. No, this is an emotional mature person knows exactly what their own inner pulse asks them to do. All right, and so you don't actually have to have any kind of concepts or teachings in your mind. You really just got to listen to this pulse that is coming from within, and make sure that you're not wasting your life force on stuff such as ego stuff, all right, that is distracting you from being able to navigate, that is distracting you from holding your focus on your own integrity. This is also where a lot of you guys have issues here, because you have good ideas and good concepts, but you're simply not doing it. All right, boundaries, needs, these things are so instrumental, especially if you're an energetically sensitive person. All right, if you try to dream your world into reality, or if you are idolizing your relationship, or idolizing your own ego, and try to just be better and do more, and keep seeking and keep fixating on things, all right, you're not gonna find this soul roadmap in you, all right, that comes through your own template. And the principle number 5, the principle of self-mastery, then, guys, comes through really accepting the larger scale of things, the way things work in the world, accepting change as part of evolution. This is how we grow. This is how we bring our soul into its highest expression. This is how we embody our soul. And again, here, it's a new level of self-responsibility that we see there, but one that is completely free of blame or fear or punishment or anything like that. Even concepts like karma become embraceable for us. I understand how I'm still working through certain things here that are not even from this lifetime, or things that I've created myself that need to be undone. This is completely okay. I can fully differentiate between energetic consequences of something, or me blaming, all right, something on the outside. I no longer have an outside, guys. I witness the outside, but I no longer am dependent on the outside. I don't care really what other people think of me. And if you disagree with me, then it's not that, I don't care. It's just like, you don't have to listen to me. So if you're listening to me and something in you resonates, all right, then this is because I'm speaking from my true self place. And that's why I call myself a living true self radio. It speaks to your true self, all right? And this is what self mastery then is, to recognize that we are all true selves here. And on a certain level, we are all connected. So by, facing the unknown, by being open to all the challenges, to be all open to all experiences, and trusting in your inner knowingness, really dedicating yourself to evolving, through going out there, expressing things, to making a lot of mistakes, to making a lot of experiences. You understand that this is the technology in you that leads you to self-mastery, and then self-mastery leads to embodiment, really. It's the sixth principle that then becomes aware to people who are, on the search to spiritual maturity and energetic maturity. So there's more to come, all right? But emotional maturity, in the way I laid this out here for you, is the foundation for this. You can apply the same principles for spiritual maturity, tolerance, accepting, sort of all the conditions around you, and all the challenges, seeing, the divinity, understanding the divinity in you and others, and the humbleness, literacy, spiritual literacy, understanding your true self, who you are, forming higher vibratory goals, following your inner knowing, your inner light, understanding your inner light, and knowing what your medicine is, and then ultimately really trusting in this divine plan that you can feel via this soul pulse. And understanding that power of choice has nothing to do with control or power, in the sense of force. That power of choice really comes through your spiritual alignment. All right, this is the soulfulness learning level that I mentioned earlier, and then energetic maturity comes to, applying all this to the etheric, to the subtle feelings, and understanding that there's a whole microcosm in you, all right, that is expressing itself in your energetic sensitivity, and that can be worked with. And this is a whole dimension of a new technology in you there, once you begin to recognize the unseen aspects of yourself, the etheric and the energetic aspects, and learn in the same way, how to form more tolerance, how to increase your literacy, how to learn about your energies, your chakra systems, your what fields are, what resonance is, what resistance is, and how you can clear your energy, how you can ground your energy, how you can center your energy, and how you can form a stronger energetic protection, how to navigate through this world, what projection and absorption is, and how we interact with other people on an unseen level, that then ultimately leads to self-mastery on an energetic level. All right, so all this talk, okay, a lot of talk today, so more like a lecture today. I kind of feel like I have to apologize for this, because there wasn't much interaction with you here today. But all this talk to show you that there is so much more to you than just your mind, your body, and your emotions, okay, your ego. There's so much more for you in place within you, and you really don't need anything on the outside. The only thing that we sometimes need is people like myself, guides, people who can speak this out, who can express this, and who can help with forming a roadmap, who can help you to cultivate newer way, or this higher learning way of living a life and understanding yourself in a more mindful, soulful, and graceful way. So you don't actually need teachings to show you the secret of things, because you know that those things aren't a secret. That's why I do these two talks here for free. All right, but what we don't do, guys, is to actually cultivate this on a daily basis. So it's simple things like taking the time to actually connect with our true self on a daily basis, creating a sacred space within ourselves, and learning, all these ways of forming resilience and literacy and navigation. Okay, these things need to be cultivated in us. So this is, in a nutshell, what higher learning actually, and then ultimately also spiritual learning through emotional, spiritual, and energetic maturity, what this is. So I hope that this resonated with you, with your true self. I hope that you find bits and pieces in here. If you want to listen to more of this kind of talk, check my YouTube channel, check my Facebook page here. There is a Facebook group called Sacred Self Healing, a group on Facebook that you can become a member. It's a private group where we discuss current energies. We also have a Skype group where this is even more online. And of course, there's lots of courses and programs and so forth that I've created over the past 10 years with the help of my wonderful teachers and guides, and also clients here. So yes, you can always request a free energy coaching session with me as your initial session, and check out the website on transcodes.com. Thank you so much for your time, for your attention. Thank you for spending this time with your own true self here. And I hope to see you next week. Thank you for all your hearts and all the wonderful comments here on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. Thank you. Bye bye.